Hi guys, this is Josh Lackey with Billy's Transmissions of High Point, NC. Today we got the Chevrolet HHR back on the lift again. The reason we got this thing up in the air is because we're checking for a leak. It seems like we got a coolant leak. Been noticing a lot of puddles in the driveway, so we're gonna pop up under here and show you guys real quick where it's leaking at. It was kind of dripping right off the transmission pan, which is right here. I've got a light up in there you guys can see, so let's see if I can get the right angle for you. So if you get right up in there, you can see that's the coolant transfer pipe connected to the thermostat housing side, and looks like we got a leak coming right in there. There's a rubber O-ring in there, and that's what we're going to try to get to today. Alright, so here's our view from the top side, and if you look down in there, you'll see there's the thermostat housing tucked away, and we've got all of this stuff up here that's in our way to gain access. So don't know how we're going to do it right now, but we're going to do some research and see how we're going to get back there. To my knowledge, there should be 3 bolts that bolts the housing to the engine, and we should be able to just take it loose there and get to that O-ring. So I'll do some research and we'll come back later. Okay, so I've gone ahead and taken the air box off. It was real simple, just a disconnection here and disconnect the mass airflow sensor. Now over here, I don't know why they designed this way, but the bolt is like upside down, and this clamp only goes on there one way because of this little indentation in it. So what I highly recommend is to take this bolt loose first if you can get to it before you disconnect it from the airbox, because if you do what I did and try to pull it off with it still connected, you're going to break your intake hose. So what you do is just make sure you pop this off of the intake box before you lift everything out of there, because that thing's real flimsy and it breaks very easily. So now we got a little bit more room. It still looks like I'm going to be reaching back behind all of this mess to get to everything, so I'm probably going to be taking these bolts off blind, but once I get everything out of there, I'll put it on camera, and hopefully it'll kind of help you guys see how things are going together, even though we won't be able to see, you know, the process of it actually coming off. Okay, so we're back up underneath the vehicle. This is the front passenger side. All I'm going to do is take loose the padlock, go ahead and drain the system so I don't have fluid going everywhere once I take everything loose up top. But just want to try to show you where the petcock is. It's up under here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. That's it right there. All you got to do is take that loose. The antifreeze will drain out and it won't be making such a big mess when we take it apart up top. So we got that draining for now, and here's the piece that you're screwing out of the radiator. Pull that out. So I've taken a few more things loose to get better access to the thermostat housing. This is what this bracket here, this is what the air box mounts to, and so there's just two nuts on the back side. I already took those off. Just 2 nuts there on the back side. And we got that out of the way. That gave me better access to reach back here and get to the bolts that mount the thermostat housing onto the back of the engine. Everything's already off now. We had to take it loose at the heater hoses. There's 2 heater hoses that went on there. You can see right there, there's 1, there's 2. And then the thermostat housing had a temperature sensor on it. There's the temperature sensor. Had to take that loose. And then right here is this is the filler neck for the thermostat housing. And all I did was take the 2 bolts out there, that bolt there, and then that bolt there, and then that came off the housing. I've got the housing over here. So here's the housing that's off the vehicle. It mounts with 3 bolts. It's got 1 long and 2 short. Then here's the transfer coolant pipe that goes to the water pump. Our leak was in between here, right? This part slides into the housing. This O-ring was leaking. I've already gone ahead and installed new O-rings on here, so these are not the old ones. Here's where the bolts go. This is, the long bolt goes here. A short bolt goes there. And then another short bolt goes here. Now you see that angle. I'm going to show you real quick what it took for me to get that bolt off without taking the sensor out. So here's how I got that access to that bolt. Was a small shallow 10mm socket with a 1/4 inch end. You had to fit that on there, and like that it just fits right against the temperature sensor, and then this 1/4 inch piece went right in there, and it was at an angle, but it turned the bolt. That's the only way you're going to do it without having to take the sensor out. So that's how I did it. Alright, so on the back side, there's an O-ring that goes here. This mounts to the block. There's another O-ring that goes here, and the thermostat fits down in there. So the thermostat's going to fit down in like that. The O-ring's going to fit just like that in the hole. Okay, so we ran into some issues trying to find the parts, because everything at the parts store for this O-ring here was showing a round one, and that was throwing everybody off, because we knew right off the bat that it was wrong, because the one that they have here is square or rectangular, oblong shape. But what we found out was this will turn into a square once you fit it in the groove, and it will be the same shape. So if you guys run into that, don't worry, the round O-ring will shape up once you put it in the groove. By the way, I just wanted to mention there was really no point in me draining the radiator, because as soon as I took loose these 2 heater core hoses, this thing went to spewing antifreeze everywhere. So put yourself a drain pan down below. It's going to get everywhere. Try to get as wide as a bucket as possible, because that stuff is just it was dripping all over the place, made a huge mess. So I'm gonna go ahead and start putting stuff back together, and I'll check back with you guys once it's fully assembled. Okay, we're back and we've got everything pretty much is ready to go. The only thing is we got to connect our vacuum pump. That was disconnected. This vacuum pump was disconnected. We got to connect, like, got to connect this here, and then we'll do the plug-in. But I got this out of the way. The hardest part, I would say, was probably getting these spring clamps back on the hoses. That one was pretty hard to get to. And then these, where are they at? Pull this back some. Alright, so there's one of the heater hoses, and that clamp was pretty hard to get to with just regular, you know, channel locks. And then there's the one on the other side. That was about the hardest part. So we've got our bracket here back on, and so all we got to do is hook up this vacuum pump and then put the intake back on, and we're ready to start filling it back up with fluid. And we're not going to forget our petcock drain on the radiator. We'll put that back in so we don't get a floor full of antifreeze again. So now everything's back together. The intake's hooked up. I've already topped it off with 50-50 mix of Dex Cool. And one other quick thing, the bolts on the thermostat housing as well as the thermostat filler neck, you want to tighten those bolts to 89 inch-pounds. So now we're just going to crank it up, let it run for a while, and we'll come back and go back up underneath the car, make sure we solve the leak issue. Okay, so I just finished letting the car run for about 5 minutes, heat up to normal operating temperature, and now we're just going to try to get back up in here and see if that thing's leaking. Let's try to get, yep, there's the pipe, and right now everything looks dry. Everything looks clean, no leaks. You can see where it was leaking before. I guess it took a little bit of the paint off, but that is dry. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. We'll run it for a day, come back in and check it again. But right now, everything looks good. Looks like the repair